Hey guys, I'm still alive, and I've got a type of video I've wanted to attempt to make for a while. A video essay. My subject of this outing is an mmorpg. It goes by the name of Final Fantasy XIV, and whether or not it is worth picking up, as you most likely glean from the title. This will be the first part in a two-part mini-series. The other one should have been uploaded at the same time, so there will be a link in the description or iCard or whatever. Before you can know whether or not the game is worth playing, you must first learn the lore. I figured I would interject, and I know I'm kind of blueballing you here, but I would really appreciate if you guys liked, commented, and subscribed if you like the video. Engagement really helps out a small channel like mine, only if you do like the video though, which I hope you do. Alright, get back to your regularly scheduled programming, you scamp. I know the first piece of information you probably want is why, and that's a great question. To be honest, my experience with MMOs is quite limited compared to most. I haven't played WoW for my entire life or anything like that, so I have no nostalgia for the genre. I do, however, love RPGs and games you have to grind and sink time into. This love led me to a game by the name of Elder Scrolls Online. Now, while I had a good time at ESO, I didn't really care for its universe. I'm not a huge Elder Scrolls nerd, and despite buying Skyrim 8 different times, I'm not a huge fan of the world it portrays throughout the course of its game series. So, on a random-ass night when I was bored out of my mind, a relatable sentiment to most of the world nowadays, I did what any sensible man would do. I turned to Google and searched Best Games to Play 2021, and on most of these lists was Final Fantasy XIV. I'd seen a YouTuber I enjoy a lot by the name of Afro Sinju had mentioned the game before on his Twitter, so I looked into it a little further. Like any self-respecting individual, I got on YouTube and typed in "Should you play Final Fantasy in 2021?" which I guess is kind of the same video that I'm making now. This was the video I watched, link in description. The video essentially said it had good character creation and was an MMO with anime elements. I looked back upon my collection of anime figures and I knew that it was calling to me. So I picked up my filthy weeb self and started downloading Final Fantasy XIV. That's how I got to this point, but the story of this game's development is even more interesting. To understand the situation surrounding Final Fantasy XIV, you must also have some background on Final Fantasy as a whole. For that, we'll have to hop in our hot tub time machine and go back to the year 1988 to a company on its last legs, Square Enix, but at this time they were just Square. A company on the verge of bankruptcy teamed up with a developer who was almost ready to give up on game development. This developer's name was, I'm so sorry they're a Japanese company so these names will be rough, Hironobu Sakaguchi. Final Fantasy was going to be his last-ditch effort to make an impact in the gaming industry, and in a way it was also the company's swan song. This was it, the make or break. If this game failed, it would be a detrimental blow to the company that would most likely end in its closure. However, you can probably glean that's not how it went down. This game was successful in Japan and in the West, and between this game and Dragon Quest, Square started the popularization of the Japanese RPG genre, or JRPGs. I don't need to explain the entire history of Final Fantasy to you for this story. Maybe I'll make that video if this one does well. All you need to know is that Square Enix became known for making great, innovative games, and they kept pushing the envelope further and further. Like Final Fantasy XI, it was an early MMORPG for the PS2 that included cross-platform features in 2002. That shit blew my mind when I figured that out. Final Fantasy XI was very successful, and they were very proud of it. But this success set them up for future failure, because with the success of 11 came a sense of confidence that brought some hubris with it. And this was apparent when development for 14 started in 2005. Following the success of Final Fantasy XI, Square Enix wanted to make a new MMORPG for the upcoming new generation of console. Final Fantasy XIV was directed by Nobuaki Komoto and produced by Hiromichi Tanaka. That brought back many of the people who worked on 11 to work on 14, because that game was successful, and if they just did the same thing over again, it would work. Right? Right? Well, that's what they thought. What they didn't account for, however, was the fact that the landscape had changed quite a bit due to one teeny tiny game called World of Warcraft. And it kind of blew 11 out of the water with more modern mechanics. The developers didn't really observe this fact and continued to do what they did to make 11 so successful. This wasn't the only factor that spelled dark tidings for the release of 14, however. Firstly, the engine, named Crystal Tools, sucked ass. Like for real. It was riddled with bugs and was a pain to work with. Then there was the fact that none of the teams really communicated and put the pieces they were making together. All the teams were really proud of what they were making individually because they were in the mindset that they made the best graphic. They were working on a mainline Final Fantasy after all. There's no way it could be bad. At least that's what they thought. The game testers and translation team would find out very quickly that that couldn't be further from the truth. The game was choppy, the dialogue was boring, the user interface was garbage, there was no content, and there was a dumbass fatigue system to stop you from playing the game, because there was a lack of content. You know a game's good when it doesn't want you to play it. Other issues include a flower pot having more polygons than a player model and tanking the game's performance, having no minimap, and having a menu that can only be navigated via controller, when the game, at the time, was PC only. The teams that had played the game relayed their concerns to the dev team, but were met with little response. This was until the beta dropped, and they realized their game sucked. Like bad. The developers put their backs into it, but the game was already too far gone. Not much could be done to fix the dumpster fire that was burning out of control. The game was released to horrible reviews and outrage. It did sell well due to being a Final Fantasy game, but after the customers realized it was ass, their faith in the company was shaken, which is the last thing Square Enix wanted. They had to make a move fast, and make a move they did. Square Enix needed a hero. Stop the music! I'm too young to get copyright strike! A knight in shining armor, if you will, but they got even more than they bargained for. A man of integrity. A champion. Hell, I'd go as far to even say a legend. Naoki Yoshida. He had worked as a planning chief on Dragon Quest X in the past, and he was the one they summoned to attempt to save their good name. And Hiromichi Tanaka was most likely taken behind Square Enix HQ and swiftly shot. There's only room for 2 Fs in Square Enix. Final Fantasy. Unless that third F is success with a silent F in front of it, your ass is going to the farm. Yoshida walked in and saw the mess laid out before him. He started by doing a lot of quality of life fixes to try and restore trust. He wanted to establish a line of communication between the devs and the customer and started creating letters from the producer. While they were making good fixes to the game, there was something that was becoming more and more apparent. Remember Crystal Tools? It was so fucked up beyond all recognition that the game could never live up to what Yoshida believed it could. They could make it playable, but not good. He presented Square Enix with 2 options. Leave the game as is and damage the trust with the customer, or burn the game to the ground and develop the game again. But better, in secret. Since I'm making this video and the game is still alive, you know which one they chose. And so it began. They had one team patching the shit game, and another secretly working on a new game that would normally take 5 years to make and developing it in 2. Why, you may ask? Because they promised to have this game out in the PS3's lifecycle. You may be asking, why update the bad game? This is because the players of that game meant a lot to them. In a time when everyone else was bashing their game or demanding a refund, those loyal players stuck by them. They defended them when, in their own words, they didn't deserve defending. And when the time came, and they announced that they were secretly working on a new game, they slowly started increasing the size of what seemed to be a moon in the sky. As the players noticed the thing in the sky growing, their skepticism did as well. They wouldn't destroy the world, right? That's crazy! But then as Dalamud loomed over them and ominous music began to play, accompanied by rolling thunder, the players knew their doom had come for them. Chaos ensued and all hell broke loose. Devs started spawning enemies in all the major towns, and many defenders took up arms to defend their favorite location. One especially legendary group of defenders were the absolute chads that formed the Great Gabu Wall. Not only did they defend their land with everything they had, they are fucking canon in the game! There is a reference to the Great Gabu Wall. I couldn't make this shit up if I tried. Back on track though, as a sense of somberness fell over Eorzea, friends gathered around for the last time as the servers reached their closing time. As they were presented with the server message, a cinematic played. And I'm not kidding when I say this is some of the sickest shit I've ever seen. There was death, carnage, a fucking dragon god showed up, and general chaos ensued. And then it was over with a message to the loyal players that had stuck with him for so long, telling that the future brought good tidings. And good tidings it did bring. At last, on August 24th, 2013, Square Enix released Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn. And to Square's and the devs' relief, it was a smash success. It was in the same Eorzea that had been decimated by the Calamity, and it is actually the focal point of the story. They make reference of Warriors of Light of whom they can't recall, which represent the previous player character. They also reference events occasionally that are a nice little nod to diehard players around in that era, which I think may be the coolest setting for a video game ever. They took the real issues with the game and turned it into lore, and I think that is a dope idea. It made me appreciate the game a lot more, and that is the exact reason I made a video explaining it to you. It really adds a layer of depth on top of this intriguing story. But that's not all there is to it. In fact, it's only half the story. What about the actual game? Well, this is, in fact, a part 1. But worry not, for part 2 is already out. That's right, I pulled a double shift and made 2 videos for you guys. To my normal viewers, this may come as a shock. If I upload more than once a year, it's considered a holiday. But there's a link to part 2 in the description, and an iCard up top if I remember to add it. I would also like to plug a video that isn't mine, which covers all these events I went over in this video in greater detail, with the actual developers. Link in the description. After you finish this video, of course. Watch time is as good as gold around these parts. Next time on Should You Play Final Fantasy. That goes by the title. Fuck. To understand the situation surrounding the Final Fantasy XIV game, To understand the situation surrounding Final Fantasy XIV, you must also have some background. You must also have some background of Final Fantasy as a whole. That was great writing. Me, I'm a genius. Some have called me amazing. It was an early mmorpg for the PS. The game was choppy. The dialogue was boring. I did user interface again. User interface. Naoki Yoshida. I missed the H in his name. Damn it, I'm sorry, Yoshida. Nobuaki Komoto was moved down to level designer, and Hiromichi Tanaka was most likely taken behind Square Enix. There's only room for 2 Fs in Final Fantasy. Leave the game as is and damage the trust with the customer. Fucking idiot. Leave the game as is and damage the trust with the customer. I still said custom. They suddenly started increasing the size. As a sense of somberness fell over Azorzia, huh? You big fan of Azorzia and how Azorzia interacts with every surface? They reference Warriors of Light of whom they can't recall, which are you're still here, huh? Observant of you to notice there's a little time left in this video. Well, since you sat here all this time, here's a picture of a cute dog. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video around. It means the world to me. Alright, love you guys. Hope you enjoyed the second part. Woo, baby! That's what I'm going for! That's what I'm about!